Welcome back, everybody. We are going to move swiftly on to fact number 22 of our show. If you're just joining us now, you are watching the No Such Thing as a Fish podcast, which in this very moment is 22 facts in to a 35 fact long marathon, all in aid of 35 years of comic relief. We are so incredibly proud of the amount of money that's coming in and of all of you who are donating. Thank you so much. We're currently sitting on £78,740. That is just astonishing, but we want to get it higher. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I'm looking for a cool million. So if we could start pumping those numbers up a bit, that would be great. But anything you could give us would be just fantastic. Comic Relief is really taking a hit this year and as is every charity in the world because of the pandemic, and they're doing everything they can to make sure that people who would need the money are getting it, and hence us trying in a little humble way to raise some money for them as well through this. So thank you to everyone who's donated already, and thank you to anyone who's going to during the course of this show. So let's get on our next guest for fact number 22. We're incredibly excited to bring him on. He's just one of the greatest living authors. There's no question about it. Sandman, American Gods, Stardust, Neverwhere. I mean, everything that he's done is just solid gold. Please welcome the one and only, it's Neil Gaiman.
Woo!
Hey! Yes!
Hello.
Hi, Neil.
Hello. In New Zealand, down in New Zealand.
I'm in New Zealand.
Very
so far away. And yet, by the miracle of time, it's actually not painful for me to talk to you at whatever it is in the morning where you are.
Oh, it's pretty painful here, Neil. We can tell you that much.
Coming up to 4 a.m., yeah.
Exactly.
But it's fun. Well, thank you for doing the show, and let's kick into it. It is fact number 22, and that is Neil Gaiman.
Okay, so my fact is that the person who coined the term science fiction, a man named Hugo Gernsback, after whom the Hugo Awards, the big science fiction awards, are also named, invented a device called the isolator, which looked rather like a diving helmet, and it covered the head completely, and it was meant to free you from any outside distractions, like the noise of children, puppies, or building, or anything, while you concentrated.
Wow.
But although he had several dozens of patents, including one for a hair removal system, he never patented the isolator.
Wow.
I mean, it sounds brilliant the way that you've said it. It sounds really lovely. I'm just going to show our audience at home what that looked like. Can you imagine Neil Gaiman writing his novels with an isolator on his head?
Do you get distracted easily, Neil? Do you think you need one of these things, or no?
I think, what I loved about the idea is that it's the equivalent of one of those internet freedom programs that just blocks your internet,
Yes.
but for the universe. What you can't actually see when Dan holds up his little picture of the isolator is that the eyes, there are two little glass eyes on this strange dome, and they're painted black with black paint, and then a tiny clear area is scratched to allow you to read basically one line at a time of whatever piece of paper, whatever documents you're holding in front of your face. I suppose theoretically to read.
Do you have to have an incredibly steady head then? Because presumably you'd get onto the wrong line. If you sort of nodded, for instance, you lose your place, don't you?
I suspect if you nodded the wrong way wearing one of those isolators, you could lose your entire head. There's a whole article about how he built the first prototype out of wood, and it muffled most of the sound. But of course, he's doing this in the late teens, early 20s, when you don't have lovely polystyrene and light insulating materials. It really is huge and heavy and ridiculous. And it may well be why he made a prototype or two, plugged it in one of his many magazines, because really what he was a magazine entrepreneur. He owned a bunch of magazines. shoved it on the cover of one, wrote a big puff article about it, and never did anything more with it.
So the reason he didn't patent it was not because he thought this should be a gift to all mankind and it would be unfair to profit from it because he'd be a billionaire. Okay.
Yeah, like for instance, how Volvo didn't patent the seatbelt so that everyone could have one. Yeah.
Or Tim Berners-Lee and the internet. This was the internet. It was the opposite of the internet. Really.
The Alternet. Yeah.
I'll just show you another
he should have done.
So you can see that there's also a gas canister that sort of is giving
pure oxygen as well. It's you
needed to breathe if you're being isolated.
You do need to breathe. Yeah.
Possibly, one starts looking at these devices and just thinking about 1920s murder mysteries and the people who swap out the gas canister for the poison canister. Possibly the laughing gas canister.
Didn't he? So he had all these in patents, I guess, rather than inventions. But one of them was an ear cushion, which I do think is useful.
Agreed.
And I think this is early days of the telephone. Andy, are you showing off your ear cushions now? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
I'm trying to work out if my ears are feeling more or less comfortable having been wearing 2 cushions for 12 hours.
Yeah, now you think about them. Yeah, now you think about it, you're going to feel those ears.
I do.
Is this what he invented, Anna? Is that what you're talking about?
Sort of. It's for a phone, I think, and it would just sit on the ear part of the phone, I believe, but still transmit the noise. I haven't actually seen what it looked like, but it's just to stop the phone.
I've seen it. It does look very much like the kind of fluffy bit that you get on headphones. It's that shape. It's round with a little bit for your ear to go into.
Right.
So what you're telling me is these have actually been invented. You're all wearing them, and I'm not. And that's the mistake that I've made. And I'm now quite uncomfortable. The combination of earphones and this headband, which, to be honest, after 13 hours, is starting to.
So Neil, why did Hugo become such a dominant name within the science fiction world to get the awards named after him as well? What did he do in that field?
It's so interesting because he wasn't one of the people who really shaped science fiction. I mean, we can point at the people who did. There was an editor, I don't think was a very nice person, but was certainly an influential editor named John W. Campbell. He had a lot to do with the shaping of the field and so on and so forth. Gernsback may have coined the term. He definitely coined the term scientifiction, which rolls off the tongue. I mean, it sounds like, you can see him going, scientific fiction, you take out the cur and the fur, and it's scientific fiction. So he definitely named that. He had magazines with names like Wonder Stories and Thrilling Wonder Stories. He wrote 3 novels. The first one is fondly remembered but incredibly badly reviewed. The second one is darkly and awfully remembered, and the reviews were terrible. And the third one, published, I believe, in 1957, the reviews weren't even trying to be polite. It was just like, why? So he definitely wasn't a writer either. But whatever he was and whatever he did, the early pulp era of science fiction, where he was reprinting a lot of Jules Verne, he was reprinting a lot of H.G. Wells in America, and republishing these things which were considered respectable in Europe and reprinting them in slightly trashy. The pulp magazines were printed on this incredibly cheap pulp paper. And I've actually collected a few, or really been given a few over the years, and the paper is falling apart. It was wood pulp. It's just yellow and liable to collapse on you. He helped make science fiction what it was. And I think, and I suspect also, apart from having probably, he did not have, as an editor, the world's greatest payment record. He was definitely not beloved from that direction, but he obviously hadn't upset enough people that when they proposed to name the award after him, it was considered non-controversial.
Because I always think it is amazing. Yeah, because like his books were terrible. A lot of people really didn't like him because he never paid any of his authors, and yet still he's one of the most recognizable surnames, at least, right? In sci-fi.
Well, I don't know. Gernsback.
Sorry,
probably
first names. I should say first names.
Surnames go. First names, absolutely.
But you were saying it's sort of like connected between the way that we think of Oscars, the Hugos is its own sort of thing.
Absolutely. I don't think, if you talk to people about the Hugo Award, they think of the award, they think of controversies about the award, they think of who's won the award and so on and so forth, but they don't really think about Hugo Gernsback. Mm-hmm. As far as I know, the Oscars have just got their name because somebody picked up one of the statues and said it looked like their Uncle Oscar.
Yes, yeah.
But, I was vaguely hoping that one of you guys would then leap in and say, people believe that. But
no one knows. No one knows where the Oscars came from, do they?
No, they don't. That's the best guess we have, I think.
Yeah, that's the story.
Yeah.
Sadly.
He invented so much other stuff, though. And he seemed to have been a real, an engineer and a craftsman, a creator of things. So one of the things he invented, his own musical instrument called the staccatone, which is a cool thing. And it was a thing that he would send out kits and you could build it yourself at home. And it was just a single vacuum tube oscillator. And then there was a little keyboard with only 16 keys on it, really. So it was very staccato. It was not. I don't think it sounded great.
It sounds like one of those keyboards that you blow into and you play. Do you know those things? Is it a bit like that?
I love those. I don't think it was. I think I was miming one of those things, and I threw you off the scent there.
Okay,
but I think I haven't heard it, annoyingly, so I don't know. It might be.
He also invented a hydraulic fishery, which I really loved. The picture of that is amazing. It's basically you get a fish, kind of factory, and you put it on the side of a river, and then inside the river you put a massive funnel, and then have a little chute that goes all the way to your little factory, and then you suck in all the fish from the river, and so you don't have to catch them or anything. They get sucked in straight into your factory. Isn't that a great idea?
Wow.
Oh,
it looks like a giant ear trumpet.
Yes, exactly. It's amazing.
Sounds like a waterside.
His television goggles as well, as you can see there.
Were they sort of 3D goggles, basically?
It's what it looks like, yeah.
Actually, I just thought about the giant funnel thing. We do have those, don't we? Those salmon cannons.
Yes.
Yeah. So, like, the salmon need to go upriver to their spawning grounds, but there's often dams in the way. And these days we have these little chutes that you can put the salmon in, and they kind of get sucked all the way up to where they want to go. Yeah. So he did kind of invent that.
He did for a slightly different purpose. We're doing it for altruistic reasons these days. Yeah. He also invented, and I like this because a really strange bit of overshare, but it's 4 a.m. Quite like going to a hairdresser and they touch your hair, and he invented an electric comb and hairbrush, which could also double up as a massager. So while brushing your hair, you also get a free head massage in the morning.
That sounds like a good idea.
I mean, it's not advanced, but sometimes it's the simple things that are the best.
Yeah.
I think a lot of what he invent and sell was because he had magazines. He'd come over from Luxembourg. He'd invented some kind of variant on a dry cell battery, which gave him enough money to start his magazines and become a magazine publisher. And he is, as a publisher, he's in control of the small ads. So he can advertise to the kids and the people reading his radio mags that he's, you can get your staccato phone here, and you can build it from a kit. There's a whole sort of captive audience.
To be fair, what kid doesn't want that? Probably when you see it in the advertisement in the magazine. We all remember those magazines as a kid and the little adverts at the back for whatever, hand buzzers or whatever. You always want to buy them.
How many of those did you ever get your hands on and then get disappointed by?
All of them.
I mean, the X-ray spectacles.
Oh yeah.
I was when I was a kid, I thought that America must be technologically way in advance of where we were, late 60s, early 70s in the UK, because they had X-ray spectacles, because there were kids with their own nuclear submarines. And you can get your own nuclear submarine. It was like $2.50. It didn't say that it was cardboard. They had sea monkeys.
Sea
monkeys, and they stood together and they smiled and they smoked little pipes under the water. I mean, what were these strange robotic creatures? It was so disappointing.
Were bewildering as children. I spent just 10 years going, are they real? Are they alive? What are these?
Wait, so they were dried. They were life, weren't they?
The little shrimps, I think.
Little shrimps, that's right, yeah.
But they did, I mean, in some ways, the free gifts on magazines of the 50s and 60s were much more sci-fi, because you could get radium and plutonium, couldn't you? You get,
right.
I think there was...
Yes, you could. There was a home nuclear kit, and it wasn't very dangerous isotopes, so they were being safe in some ways.
Yeah,
it wasn't uranium-235. It was
234. It was one of the. It was around the same area.
It was, yeah.
I read a really fun thing just on science fiction authors, and one of my favorite books of the last few years of that realm was The Martian by Andy Weir. It's a fantastic read. Andy Weir is petrified of flying, so much so that he wasn't able to go to the movie shooting of The Martian because he couldn't fly there. He couldn't do any of his deals in person because he was too afraid to fly to, say, Hollywood to sign any contracts or so on. And just that sort of someone who obsesses over, basically the whole movie is about flight and him working that out. I just find that so bizarre. It's like when you find out that Stephen King is afraid of the dark and needs to sleep with a light on, so is said. And Isaac Asimov as well, supposedly, was afraid of flying as well. All these...
Bradbury. I don't know about Asimov, but Ray Bradbury definitely did not fly.
Really?
And I was fortunate. When I met Ray, it was in the UK for what I think must have been his 70th birthday.
Wow.
And he was over here to promote a book. They had a little birthday party for him in the Natural History Museum, and he had come over on the QE2.
Wow.
And
oh my God.
He loved the thing of being a non-flyer. I think he liked both the fact that when he went places, it took him a long time to get there.
Right.
It was a proper journey. And also liked the fact that nobody got to make him leave his home if he didn't want to.
Yeah, that's cool. The QE2, I read this just today. Do you know who it's named after, the QE2?
I would say Queen Elizabeth II.
Yeah, you'd think, right? And she launched it. She launched the QE2. But no, it's named after the QE1. It's got nothing to do with the Queen. It's named as a QE1.
So it's like a movie franchise.
Yeah, exactly. It's the sequel to the first one, but it's not her. It's not her that it's named after.
The QE1 is named after the
first. I spent my life
right?
believing it was the wrong queen.
Yeah, I know. Me too.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. Ray Bradbury, what a hero. If you listen to him talking, it's kind of like listening to you when you do your lectures, Neil. It's such concise, brilliant advice for writing. So exciting to hear the sort of process distilled through. I think that's the sort of one of the greatest things is when you hear an author talk brilliantly about writing. And you're in that category with a number of people. But Bradbury was just such a fantastic character. And I love that Fahrenheit 451 was written as we were talking about pulp novels and dime novels. He wrote it. We know how much he wrote that novel for. It was $9.08 because he went to the UCL's library and he borrowed the typewriter and you had to put a dime in to use it. And that's how much he used up in order to write that novel. Wow. $9.80 in total is how much that cost.
Oh God, I thought you were saying that's how much he made from it, and I was thinking, oh man, poor guy, must have had a bad deal.
Bad deal there, yeah.
So you're saying he just paced through it really quickly, just smashed it out?
He wrote. Yeah, he went to the library in Los Angeles, and they had a place where it was coin-operated typewriters. you put your money in, and it would give you access to the typewriter for an hour or for 4 hours or whatever.
Wow.
And he would just sit there at that typewriter, because he didn't own one at that point, writing his novel.
I guess arguably that could really make you want to do it just like the isolator, really, because you can't dawdle, you can't sit around reading Twitter if you're paying for the hours on your typewriter.
Yeah.
Ian Fleming used to write a wonderful essay on how he wrote the Bond books. And the first thing that he would do is go to a city where he didn't know anybody, which would not be a place that he wanted to go, and check into a hotel that wasn't very nice. And he'd have his typewriter, he'd have his stack of paper, and all his entire creative process consisted of, I'm checked into this hotel for 2 weeks. I hate it here. In 2 weeks, if I just get this book finished, I can check out and I can leave.
That's such a good idea.
He would have been great in quarantine hotels, wouldn't he? He'd just knock out another one.
Yeah, perfect. Do you know, wasn't he going to call Goldfinger Gold Prick at one point?
He was at one point, and I can't remember why. Yeah, I think it was Erno Goldfinger, the architect, said, I'll sue you if you use the name Goldfinger.
So he said, and so he wrote to his publisher, saying, well, call it Gold Prick then. And his publishers, I think, against better judgment, said, no, we want to stick with Goldfinger. But it could have been a huge franchise if he'd kicked it off with Gold Prick.
Oh yeah, the franchise really suffered from the lack of change.
Yeah, exactly. I think.
So my favourite tiny bit of Ian Fleming trivia is actually Roald Dahl trivia, because lots of people know they were connected. Dahl wrote the screenplay for Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, invented all the child catcher stuff. He did the screenplay for, I think, You Only Live Twice. And they were spies, or at least sort of intelligence at the same time in the early days of World War II in the US. But what a lot of people don't know is that once the war was over and Dahl had come over to Hollywood because Disney were going to make a film of the Gremlins, they didn't make it. And now Dahl was broke and married and was completely at a loose end, did not know how to make money. And Ian Fleming gave him 2 plots of short stories. And he said, look, I've got these 2 ideas for stories, but I haven't written them. And one was Lamb to the Slaughter, the one where the woman murders her wife with a leg of lamb and then serves it to the police officer who comes to investigate. Yes. And one was the one about the furniture hunter who goes to finds an incredibly fancy and valuable antique in a barn, persuades the people who own it that it's not valuable, but the legs are valuable, and then goes to pick it up, and they've chopped it into firewood, but they've left the legs for him. And those 2 plots actually were Fleming's, and he gave them to Dahl. Wow. Dahl turned them into stories, published them in the New Yorker, and had a career.
And that was before the children's books. That's kind of what kickstarted him.
Absolutely. He was much more famous as an adult author. His collections, Kiss Kiss, Someone Like You, these sexy, nasty tales of the unexpected things were where he made his name and his money, and he didn't become the world's biggest children's author and proto David Williams impersonator until the late 70s, really.
Yeah.
It took a decade.
My favorite Dahl fact is, it's a bit of a sad fact because it's about his passing, but when he was in his deathbed, I think he was in hospital surrounded by family, he said his final words to his family, and it was along the lines of, I'm so happy, I love you all so much, goodbye kind of thing. It was very sweet. And he closed his eyes, and the nurse saw him going. She thought, I'll just give him a little bit of a, maybe morphine or whatever it was to kick him into it as a peaceful transition. So she put the needle into him. And when she did that, he went, oh, fuck! Those were the last words of Roald Dahl.
Wasn't he? He was buried with lots of exciting stuff, wasn't he? He was one of these people who had a pool cue and some burgundy. What else did he have?
I want to say a pencil, but that's the least exciting thing you can imagine. But I think he was buried with a pencil.
Yeah, probably his yellow. He always wrote on yellow notepads, didn't he?
Yeah,
so probably some of
saw,
those.
a power saw.
Power saw.
But maybe that was about 13 hours ago. We were saying that people used to be buried with stuff to try and get them out of the coffin in case they were buried alive.
Could have been that, or it could have been to sharpen his pencils. Don't know, do we?
A pencil sharpener roll? No, you still want the power saw.
Some years ago, I was sitting with a friend of mine who had what would prove to be very terminal Parkinson's in his last days. He no longer really spoke. He was completely nonverbal, but he would sit having a cigar out on his front porch. And I remember going, and I would just sit with him. And the newspaper was there. And I looked down and there was a Roald Dahl related headline. And I turned to my friend and I said, Peter, I remember you interviewed Roald Dahl, didn't you, for the BBC a long time ago? And my friend, who at this point really was pretty much nonverbal, had not spoken in days, just looked up and said, yes, it was a complete shit.
Good to know. Well,
The more people you speak to about Roald Dahl, the more people have, the more people don't seem to have liked him very much. It's extraordinary. Having grown up with him, having read all these incredible, wonderful books, to read how personally difficult he could be, it is a strange transition,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I've got a really stupid sci-fi fact. It's about Doctor Who. Does Doctor Who qualifies, right?
Yeah, what do you mean? Of course.
Just checking.
I won a Hugo Award for writing an episode.
Did you? What, the Doctor's wife?
The Doctor's wife.
Oh, what an episode, Neil!
Yeah,
what an episode!
Yeah, I think that's Anna. I think that's a yes.
It's a hard yes, isn't it?
So what's the fact, Anna?
It's pretty lowbrow, but it's that in the Daleks, if you watch the old Daleks, they're all wearing seatbelts. You had to wear a seatbelt inside a Dalek. I learned this from this actor John Scott Martin, who I think was basically the Dalek, Mr. Dalek. He played the Daleks for 40 years, and he said that you had to have a seatbelt inside them because it's quite bumpy, and there was no floor, so you just pushed yourself along with your feet, and that was that. And he said also there was one very embarrassing moment where, because it was so hard to maneuver inside a Dalek with your seatbelt on, he's supposed to be chasing Doctor Who, and Doctor Who ends up coming behind him and chasing him. Now, that sounds like a bad scene in a cartoon. I don't know how that would happen in real life, but in the scene it does.
Do you know, we were talking about theme tunes earlier, and with Richard Osman, and one of the theme tunes that I failed to mention was the Doctor Who theme tune, which in its original theme, as in the very first song that went out, it was not played by a band. It was not done as something that was recorded as music. It was entirely samples that were collected by this lady called Delia Derbyshire, and she went through them and she cut and pasted them basically of just existing sound effects and so on, and created this entire tune on paper with scissors. It's phenomenal. Yeah, just the most iconic sounding theme tune of British television, and all done on paper by this lady.
Really early, fabulously early electronic music. Delia Derbyshire, I think she's finally starting to get credit for what she did and what she came up with. My understanding is I think she went in and recorded the keying of a piano. They ran a key along some piano strings and things. So there was that they recorded to have as a sort of a bzum noise in there. But I think there are so many things that Doctor Who actually did get to that start with Doctor Who. And one of those things is all of the giant electronic music where we point at the Enos of this world and the Kraftwerks of this world. But really, it was Delia Derbyshire.
Really?
Wow.
That's really cool. Her name definitely needs to get recognized more if that's the case.
Well, we've mentioned it at prime time at 4:20 in the morning.
Yeah, but everyone in New Zealand is
That's true.
all over it.
Anyone who is still awake now knows who Delia Derbyshire is.
I'll just quickly say we're so close to hitting £80,000, everyone. We are 79,844. We're so close. If anyone watching can dip into their pockets and help us get to that next landmark bit, and we've almost got 4,000 supporters. Thank you so much, everyone who's doing that. And also, Neil, thank you for showing up to do this. I know
thanks, Neil.
you must have a bit of a history, I imagine, with Comic Relief through your years, or maybe is this the first?
No, I do. My first Comic Relief meeting, I think, was 1989 or 1990, because we did the Utterly Comic Relief comic. And it was the only time there's ever been a Comic Relief comic. But I had this idea and then swept a lot of other people up into the madness. So,
Wow.
What year was that?
I think 90, 89 maybe. Somebody must have access to a screen.
Yeah.
So we've dragged you back to Comic Relief after 3 decades. Well done.
I've seen it. It's amazing. It's also like Lenny Henry did stuff for it, and
Yeah. It's also we sort of had a comedic run. We had a story with Blackadder and a little disabled girl and him being sort of taught a lesson. We had a weird story going on at Comic Relief that Grant Morrison sort of spearheaded, in which Griff Rhys-Jones was replaced by an entity who actually looked like Griff Rhys-Jones, but when you opened up his head, there was a sort of a doll's house inside. I wound up writing, I was the editor, but I also wound up writing the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles page.
What?
Because nobody else would. It was that thing where, because you're the editor, and it's like, everybody wants to do, everyone wants to do the Batman page. So who's up for Teenage Mutant Ninja Hero Turtles? They were arguing, I think.
Right, yeah.
Yes, they got to argue about whether or not they were Hero Turtles or Ninja Turtles.
I'm sorry, Neil, but I mean, for me, next time I pick up a new book of yours, when I get to the author's biography, I need to see American Gods, Sandman, Good Omens, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I can't
One page of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
How is that not up there?
There's all these great things that sort of slip off the biographies with enormous relief. My Duran Duran biography never makes it onto any of those giant lists of also by.
It's like when that, one call center job finally falls off the bottom of your CV. You think, oh, thank God. People will take me seriously now. We know how you feel.
Exactly.
That's what we're saying.
Well, we've run out of time, unfortunately. Neil, thank you so much for being here. I can say that we've just gone over £80,000 now.
Wow.
So that is fantastic. Thank you, everyone who listened to us just say that and responded to it. Thank you for doing that. Neil, we hope you're having fun down there in New Zealand. It's certainly a country that got it right with the pandemic. So good luck to you and your family and everything down there. And we'll hope to see you again soon.
Yeah, I hope so. Hopefully in the flesh next time.
Yes, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes, everyone, with our next guest. It is the mighty John Hodgman.
Hi everyone. Well, I have just woken up 2 days after we did that Comic Relief 20-hour marathon. I really hope you enjoyed the video that you just watched. There's plenty more where that came from, so do watch them all. But in doing so, we have a deal. You watch the videos, you also have to pay. So go to comicrelief.com/fish. The link is just down there. And please give us anything you can afford, because all the money that you can send us will be given to amazing causes. Please, please do donate now.